Hi, thank you, Jackie. Good morning to our friend in the US and good afternoon to our friend in Israel. You can guess I'm not Oded Ross. My name is Ariela Chezi Ashkenazi, and I'm VP at the Israel America Chamber of Commerce, affiliated with the US Chamber of Commerce in Washington, DC. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our third in a series of webinars we launched earlier this year in partnership with Holland Knight, which focuses on the new business opportunities, policy, and regulatory trends in the Biden administration. I would like to thank our honorable keynote speaker, Congresswoman Susan Delbene, Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, and Mr. Charles Small, representing the Secretary of U.S. Department of Transformation, who will be joining us on the panel discussion. I would like also to thank our partners, the Israeli Consulate in Miami, the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel, BDO Israel, the commercial section at the US Embassy in Israel, and the Export Institute. A couple of words about the Chamber. We are a private business organization of 200 Israeli and American companies. Our mission is to promote and expand the trade, investment, and business relation between Israel and the US. On a daily basis, we are a platform for Israeli and American companies to connect, create business, and collaborate on mutual topics like CSR and circular economy. We invest a lot of efforts to remove trade barriers and facilitate the trade between the two countries. For this, we create sectorial and cross-sectors committees such as tax, pharma, energy, visas, and others, which works vis-a-vis the relevant regulatory institutions and government ministries in Israel. Last year, we created the Municipal Hub Committee with partnership with BDO, which aims to match between American municipalities' needs and Israeli smart cities tech company. The Chamber is the hub of information on trade between both countries, and it's done through a variety of ways like seminars, roundtable, and webinars such as this one. We have a wide network in the US and of course in Israel. We invite you to contact us for more information and join our activities. I wish us all fruitful and enlightening webinar. Thank you all. Special thanks, of course, to Meital and Ron.
Madam Congresswoman Delbene, Mr. Mayor Suarez, dear partners, colleagues, and guests, dear business owners who join us this morning from Israel and from all over the world, and from here, of course, in Florida. Good morning, shalom and boker tov to the people here in the US, erev tov to our friends in Israel. The passing year was very challenging for everybody. Every economy in the world was affected by the pandemic. Many businesses suffered, some collapsed, but there are also those who identified new opportunities and managed to survive. Some even flourished. When I came to Miami about 6 months ago, I found a different city than I knew before. It was quiet, it was empty, there were no traffic jams, and many closed businesses. But of course, what one couldn't see on the surface was the work that continued to be done behind the scenes. I'm proud to say that even during this challenging time, our consulate here in Miami and our economic office in New York continued to work closely with the city of Miami and with a variety of economic organizations in Florida and elsewhere to improve the collaboration and create more opportunities for involving Israeli companies, for creating more jobs and innovation here in Miami. The sector of smart cities is not new to Israeli companies. I remember participating in international conferences in Tel Aviv about smart cities more than 10 years ago. I know the technology improved since then. I know that the number of startups in this field grew. And I have no doubt that the enthusiasm only doubled or tripled. In fact, Tel Aviv is already implementing smart cities tech and concept in most of its communication with its residents. Here in Miami, we follow the feisty campaign of Mayor Suarez. We hear you, Mr. Mayor. And we are delighted to invite Israeli companies to participate in your vision for Miami. We will be happy to continue our close cooperation with the Innovation Authority of Miami and bring more pilots of Israeli innovative companies. I wish to thank Congresswoman Susan Delbene and Mayor Suarez, the Mayor of the City of Miami, for joining us today to present your vision regarding the synergy between Israel and the United States in the field of smart cities. I wish also to thank Holland and Knight and the Israel American Chamber of Commerce for organizing this webinar. Enjoy the event, and we are here to follow the best ideas and make them come true. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the Consulate and to the American Israel Chamber. We appreciate the embassy and the Israeli government's interest in facilitating this today. My name is Ron Klein. I'm a former congressman from the state of Florida in Washington and co-chair of our Holland Knight Israel practice along with Meital Stavinsky. It is my extreme pleasure today to introduce Congresswoman Susan Delbene. Congresswoman Delbene represents the 1st Congressional District in the state of Washington. As you may know, the state of Washington is a tech hub, home to Microsoft, Amazon, and thousands of other technology businesses. Ms. Delbene has served in Congress since 2012 and brings a unique voice to the nation's capital with more than 2 decades of personal experience as a successful technology entrepreneur and business leader. She currently serves as vice chair of the House and Ways and Means Committee, which is an essential committee dealing with taxes, healthcare, technology, and retirement. She's also chair of the very important business New Democrat Coalition, which I served when I was there, and co-chair of the Women's High Tech Caucus and Internet of Things Caucus. Before entering Congress, Congresswoman Delbene worked in the biotech industry before earning an MBA from the University of Washington and embarking on a successful career as a technology leader and innovator. In more than 2 decades, she helped to start drugstore.com as its vice president of marketing and store development and served as CEO and president of Nimble Technology, a business software company based on technology developed at the University of Washington. Congresswoman Delbene also spent 12 years at Microsoft, most recently as corporate vice president of the company's mobile communications business. You can see what type of experience she has and brings to the table. Congresswoman Delbene's mix of real-world experience in both the public and private sector gives her a deep understanding of how to build a successful business, create jobs, implement real fiscal accountability, and change and improvement in the operation of government, which makes her a unique and special presenter for today's topic. Welcome, Congresswoman Delbene. We look forward to your remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Klein, and thank you to Holland and Knight, the American Israel Chamber, BDO Israel, and the Israel Consulate in Miami for bringing us all together. I'm excited to join everyone today and to speak about the future of smart cities and the innovative technologies that really can bring us together and that we can collaborate on between 2 nations and form a close partnership. Across the United States, you've heard over and over, we have a lot of aging infrastructure, and that is a challenge, but also an opportunity for us to build and rebuild infrastructure that will last us long into the future, incorporating new smart technologies throughout our cities and our communities. Smart cities and communities are really the next iteration of an increasingly digitally connected society with intelligent devices, sensors, and software that allow our existing infrastructure to have the equivalent of digital eyes and ears. These smart devices support more efficient and effective control and monitoring of core government functions. Things like energy and water systems, transportation networks, human services, broadband connectivity, and public safety operations. And so these updates will really equip our cities with the resources they need to provide better services and make the most of very limited municipal budgets. Smart technologies enable city leaders to make better and more informed decisions, to improve community safety, to improve mobility and resilience to natural and man-made disasters, to reduce costs and traffic congestion and air pollution and carbon emissions. So for example, in my state of Washington, the city of Spokane in Eastern Washington partnered with Itron and Washington State University to install smart streetlights equipped with air quality sensors. And those sensors save energy costs and improve the safety of urban residents by tracking air quality in each area and raising any concerns. Smart technologies can also increase our resilience to natural and man-made disasters. For example, in the city of Seattle, they partnered with the University of Washington and Argonne National Laboratory to deploy an array of sensors across the city to improve hyperlocal weather forecasting to reduce flash flooding. And so that ability to go from regional to hyperlocal is another critical role that smart technologies can play. And ultimately, technologies like these can save lives. In Los Angeles, we have traffic planners who've analyzed data on pedestrian and cyclist fatalities to pinpoint the most dangerous intersections. And then they added bike lanes and posted officers there during rush hour. And I know that cities in Israel use QR technology to help businesses safely reopen after emerging from COVID lockdowns by having employees scan personal QR codes, which enable the camera to take an employee's temperature. So it's clear that smart technologies can transform lives for the better. Investments in smart city technology can also be very good public policy. In 2015, a study found that an increase of $1 in government technology investment would save nearly $4 going forward. According to Smart America Challenge, city governments are expected to spend $41 trillion over the next 20 years on smart technologies to upgrade their infrastructure. So the return on the investment at that level is a huge competitive advantage, better for the public in terms of services, and really can bring prosperity and economic opportunity to our communities. So the United States clearly is not alone in this pursuit to advance the development of smart cities. Globally, smart cities, the market size is expected to double from around 400 billion in 2020 to over 800 billion by 2025. And Israel has been a leader in the development and implementation of smart city technology for many years. And so I probably don't need to tell this group that Tel Aviv was awarded the title of the world's smartest city at the 2014 Smart City Expo. But I'm glad to see meetings like this take place. We know that as cities and countries continue to advance smart city technology, there's clearly going to be a growing need for all types of smart city innovations that are being developed in Israel. And so while US cities are actively pursuing the smart cities model, the transition, I think, has been slower than expected, and there's several reasons. Right now, the federal government's efforts have really lacked coordination, scope, and focus to really achieve the results that we need to help put smart technologies to work. You can imagine if you're a small city, it doesn't work very well if you are trying something new, you have a limited budget and it doesn't work. And then another city ends up doing something similar and having the same problem. Or someone has huge success, but no one else knows about it. So that's why I've co-led the introduction, again, in this Congress too, of the Smart Cities and Communities Act. It's legislation that was developed in collaboration with cities across the country, as well as with telecommunications and information technology companies. And the bill would authorize $220 million annually for 5 years to support the expansion of smart cities. It would enhance federal coordination of smart city programs, including improved reporting and demonstration of the value and utility of these systems. So there really is shared information and people know what works or doesn't work and why in different scenarios. It would provide assistance and resources to local governments that are interested in implementing smart city technologies, help develop a skilled and technology savvy domestic workforce to support smart cities, and improve the quality and performance of smart city technologies while assessing and enhancing cybersecurity and privacy protections. And I want to highlight that because these technologies only work, these technologies only work if people have trust in them. And that means there has to be responsibility in the public and the private sector for the types of information that might be collected or seen, what happens with them, and people understanding that they are protected and their privacy is protected. So critical for this discussion, fostering international collaboration and trade in smart cities technology, also another piece of our legislation. So I'm looking forward to seeing where smart cities in the US and Israel and in the rest of the world will go. There's so much possibility, and just want to thank you again for having me with you today.
Well, Congresswoman Delbene, we couldn't have asked for a more informed opening to our conversation today. That was extraordinary. Thank you. We also heard very loud and clear tremendous markets. Of course, these are Israeli businesses and U.S. businesses on this webinar today that are interested in finding ways into the market. The one question I'd have for you is, and you can just approach this from your own state of Washington. It's a hub in its own right, of course, in technology, but maybe share with the folks on the line. How does a business come to the state of Washington, for example, identify opportunities and collaborate or find business ways into the market?
Well, I think people's first tendency is to go to large cities and work there. I also think folks, though, can go to, for example, state departments of commerce that have been working in collaboration across the state on these issues. And that's why in our federal legislation, we want to take that information from all the states and share that together, too. So there's shared learning across the country. Because and at the state departments of commerce, they can provide information on a lot of the smaller communities that might have interesting projects where technology can play a key role. And I highlight that because we have huge opportunities in a lot of our smaller communities or even rural communities that often get overlooked, that where there can be a huge advantage for them to have technologies that help bring people together or gather information that might be hard to have a person employed to go out and gather on a regular basis, or might be more vulnerable to certain types of natural disasters and not have all the information available. So I'd encourage people to connect with the local communities and with local government, but don't forget those small cities and those rural communities where there are huge opportunities, and realize that we all have work to do on pilots to prove what works. And like I said, what doesn't work, not every technology works in every scenario. And I think it's important that we do a good job, because communities have small amount of resources to spend. And if something doesn't work well, it's really hard for them to recover from that. So I think we also all have an obligation to think about what works where, and to share that information broadly so people really choose the technologies that work for them.
Yeah, two points I heard loud and clear there. Number one, don't look at only the big cities as the opportunities. Sometimes they're much more bureaucratic and difficult to get into, and a small city may be easier to talk to and persuade. And second, I think to your point, even though something may be proven in Israel, it needs to be proven in the United States for people who make decisions to have to feel comfortable with it many times. And a pilot project is a wonderful way to get in the door to prove it, because once it is proven, proof of concept goes in one city, then other cities look to that and they go forward.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We know you're in the middle of committee meetings today and lots of other things. So we look forward to continuing to hear from you and your leadership and working with you on how we can support the U.S.'s entry into a much more smart technology basis for cities and government. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Take care.
You too. And then now I'm going to turn it over to Meital Stavinsky, my co-chair, who is going to introduce someone who has certainly taken a leadership role on the actual practical side of running a city and really creating a vision of the future. So Meital, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Ron, and thank you so much for Congresswoman Delbene. So as a resident of the city of Miami, I'm delighted to introduce our mayor, who truly needs no introduction, Mayor Francis Suarez. Whether in the US or in Israel, you must have noticed some news about Miami, spearheading a global grid of startup ecosystems, attracting talent and capital, much thanks to the tireless, dedicated, and passionate work of Mayor Suarez. Israelis love Miami, and I always love to say that it is the closest you can get to Tel Aviv in the US. It is in Miami. Shortly after I came from Israel, I learned that my Cuban roots get me the title Juban, and that it is perfectly fine to have an accent because all are welcomed here. As the first Miami-born mayor, Ms. Suarez is committed to building a Miami that lasts forever, that welcomes everyone. With a vision for a new and improved Silicon Valley here in Miami, Mayor Suarez was recently selected to serve as an Aspen Institute Rodel Fellow and also named as a Time Future 100 leader. Last year, he was elected by American mayors to serve as the second vice president and president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors for the 2022-23 term. Mayor Suarez, we're honored to have you join us today.
Thank you, Meital. It's such a wonderful introduction. I very much appreciate your comments and introductory comments, and Congressman, and you know, the Congressman who just left, who made such a great and cogent presentation about smart cities and how big cities and small cities have to collaborate to make sure that they can implement solutions that work best for their residents. For me, it's obviously a pleasure not only to be here with you, but of course with the acting Consul General Galit and with Odette from the Israeli American Chamber of Commerce, who have done so much for our community and for making sure that there is a strong collaboration between the city of Miami and the Jewish community in our city. The Jewish community is one that is very aligned with the values of the Hispanic communities here in Miami. And we care for each other, we protect each other, we advocate for each other. So for me, it's just really a tremendous honor to be here with all of you. Miami is experiencing not just a moment, we think we're experiencing a movement. In the past 3 years, we've had $10 billion in new construction. Our growth rates have been 8% my first year as mayor, 10% my second year, and even in a pandemic, we grew by 6%. We have the highest bond rating that we've ever had in the history of the city. We have a $400 million bond called Miami Forever, which was funds that were borrowed by our residents to focus on climate resilience, to focus on sea level rise and flood mitigation, affordable housing, and cultural institutions. So we are really forward leaning in terms of our investments. We want to make sure that Miami is here forever and that Miami is here for everyone. We've had the lowest homicide rate and crime rates in the last 50 years. We have strong fundamentals for long-term growth and economic diversification. And we've been able to control our homeless population in a compassionate way. We have 555 homeless in the city of Miami as of today. And we're going to be unveiling, hopefully in the near future, what I call a functional zero plan, where we want to get to zero homeless in the city and hopefully get to a point where we can scale that nationally as I enter into potentially being the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors beginning in January of next year. In Miami, we know what our greatest asset is. We know that our greatest asset are people like you, Meital, our people. We know that we have a diverse, multilingual city. We're incredibly talented, incredible ambition. And for us, we don't think it's time for us to just survive. We think this is an opportunity for us to thrive. We have a creative culture. Our university system, which we don't talk enough about, and has created this perception that maybe we're a little bit behind some other parts of the United States. But universities like FIU, which was my alma mater, is #1 in the nation for graduating Hispanic and Black engineers. #1 in the nation. Miami-Dade College is the largest and most successful community college system in America. And the University of Miami just announced a $12 million donation from the Knight Foundation for a top computer science program in the country. WinCode and other upskilling organizations are upskilling residents that don't follow the traditional educational paths. So that's something we're very excited about. And we've now reached a critical moment in the history of our city with the sort of how can I help tweet, which was an invitation to the creative class and the innovative class to come to Miami. I was doing a Zoom meeting and a Zoom meeting the other day, and something to your point, Meital, which was there was a picture which was a juxtaposition of the beaches of Miami and the beaches of Tel Aviv, and they were on two sides of each other, metamorphosizing. And I think there is a tremendous opportunity as technology decentralizes and sort of gets away from one traditional hub to have a hub in Miami, a hub in Israel, and certainly a hub in the West Coast and be completely connected as a world. I think that's where the world is going. And I think Miami is incredibly well positioned to not just get capital from the West Coast, but certainly to get innovation and capital from Israel, as well as from New York. Like I said, how can I help tweet triggered sort of an inflection point, an explosion. The inflection point was where big tech and new entrepreneurs are now looking at Miami as a real potential tech hub. We have people like Blackstone and Microsoft and Keith Rabois and the Founders Fund and Peter Thiel and people of all different backgrounds. Eric Schmidt. I mean, so many people who are coming from the tech and the finance industry. We've had as a government, we focused a tremendous amount on embodying that philosophy of how can I help, right? How can I help is not just about embracing a culture of service and embracing a culture of hospitality, but it also needs to translate into being a functional government and a government that helps people. So for us, once the minute I got elected, I created something called ePlan, meaning that all electronic plans can now be submitted online. We then follow that up with something we called eStart. So now you can set up a business, start a business from your computer, from your phone. It's never happened before. And that's something that we wanted to sort of catch up really to the state and the federal government that allow you, or the state, which you can get a corporation set up for $70 almost instantly. We have our next goal is to be completely virtual. I want us to have, I call it eGov. They say that I'm a dinosaur. I'm 43 years old. They call me a dinosaur for calling things whatever. That's like kind of yesterday's term. But I say, look, I'm not quite a millennial. I think I just missed it by a couple of years. So for me, but the experience needs to be virtual. I mean, look at everything that we're doing. We're doing this right now. Everyone is in a different place, and we're able to communicate seamlessly virtually. There's no reason why anyone should ever have to go into a government building unless it's absolutely necessary. Everything should be done from the comfort of their home, and that's where we're heading. We also are working with Microsoft Eclipse on water and air assessment tools to implement what we're going to be doing, something which is earth-shattering and exciting, which is our carbon neutrality plan that we're unveiling on Earth Day this year, so that we can get to net zero in carbon emissions and lead the way on the mitigation side. We're already doing a tremendous amount, like I said, on the adaptation side to adapt to Mother Nature's challenges every year. And of course, a big part of that, of our adaptation plans, are going to be our stormwater master plan, which is going to be unveiled this year, which will give us a roadmap on how we want to spend the $200 million of resiliency money that we have as part of Miami Forever. I just want everyone to know that Miami is here to help you be successful, that we are a multi-ethnic, multi-culture, and multi-religious city. We embrace that. That's part of our strength. We think that the ties that we have with the Israeli community and the Jewish community are stronger than ever. As mayor, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we have a city that is free from any sort of anti-Semitic comments or behavior. In fact, worked with the AJC on incorporating the definition of anti-Semitism, and because it should be a zero tolerance. There should be no tolerance for any kind of discrimination against any ethnic or religious group in any city in America, frankly. And I think for me, that's not who we are, and that's not what America is. And so I'm just very blessed to be here with you all today. Please know that I'm a resource for all of you. I'm not someone who's partisan in the traditional sense. From my perspective, I'm reminded of a quote, and I'll finish with this from my dear friend who's the mayor of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Bill Peduto, who says, "You know what, Mr. Mayor, in America, there's three parties. There's Republicans, there's Democrats, and there's mayors." And I think that's very true. Mayors see the world differently. We see the world as problem solution. And I think that's the approach. And I think that's why it resonates with so many people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And thank you for signing the AJC pledge. It's truly your leadership is your passion and all that you've been doing for Miami and really your leadership on the Conference of Mayors. One question, if I may, mention funding for resiliency and infrastructure in Miami. Can you please give us a few examples of smart city technologies that the city of Miami will be interested in, solutions perhaps that actively currently the city is looking for, that may present an opportunity for Israeli companies that provide such solutions?
Absolutely. I think the biggest one that we're looking at is certainly in the climate adaptation space. Whether it's sensors, whether it's predicting models, whether it's the best technology on how to deal with water management. We're the most wind resilient city on the planet, but we need our next challenge is to become the most water resilient city on the planet. The good news is we have resources. So all we need is innovators. We need good solutions that our engineers can test and can use. And I know that Israel has done some miraculous things with water. in terms of taking a place that's very dry and arid and being able to get water throughout the whole country and desalinization and all the things that they've done. So I know that Israel is very accustomed to dealing with complex problems and finding incredible solutions. I got to run, but thank you so much for this amazing and marvelous opportunity. And I look forward to continuing to collaborate with all of you.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you.
We're really excited, as we've heard from our keynote speakers, and we will now I would like to introduce our panelists. We're having exciting panel discussion. First, of course, my partner, Ron Klein, former US Congressman and my co-chair of the Israel practice. Charles Small, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs for the U.S. Department of Transportation. Charles worked directly with the Secretary of Transportation, who said in his nomination hearing, the time is now for the U.S. to invest in infrastructure and pledge action how the DOT can approach street design and the regulation of emerging technology. And with President Biden pushing a major infrastructure package, it's truly an historic moment in U.S. infrastructure. So we're greatly appreciate Charles taking time from his very busy day to share with us insights. Ram Sid, who is the head of innovation and deputy CEO of the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel, an NGO that represents all of Israel's diverse municipalities and towns. And Shachar Ziv, the managing partner of BDO Israel and member of City Zone Steering Committee. Shachar is a CPA with 20 years experience providing consulting and accounting services. Thank you all for joining us. Charles, I would like to please start with a question to you. Both the Secretary of Transportation share an important experience, serving a vibrant city and experiencing firsthand its needs and challenges. The Secretary served previously as Mayor of South Bend, and you served as the Director of Federal Affairs and National Engagement for the City of Los Angeles. Can you please share with us the vision of the Secretary for Transportation Infrastructure, what policies may the DOT lead in the coming years, and what opportunities it may create for adoption of innovative smart city technologies?
Well, thank you, Meital, for that question, and good morning, everyone. Very excited to be with you today. I was really excited to hear the Congresswoman mention Los Angeles and their smart cities work. It's something that I'm obviously very familiar with, having worked with Mayor Garcetti in the city of Los Angeles. And you know, I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But also excited to hear some of the great things that are happening with Mayor Suarez and the city of Miami. I think it is incredibly exciting what is going on with this Miami moment and how they are being positioned as potentially one of the next great big American tech cities. And you know, as a Californian, I think it's okay for me to say this. I think it's, you know, us having Californians having a monopoly on technology for so long has been good in some ways, but it's also been bad in some ways. And I think the technology hubs becoming more democratized across the country, whether in Miami, whether in Austin, is really, really great, and something that I think we're hoping to support at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Also, you know, it's very exciting to be with representatives from the country of Israel. It's a country that I'm very, very familiar with, having, you know, worked in the city of Los Angeles. I don't know if we're as popular with as Miami maybe, but we have a very strong Jewish community in LA. And in my prior life, I worked for the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, for 5 years. And there's a fairly strong Jewish community in the city of New York and throughout New York State as well. So very, very familiar with a lot of the great technologies and a lot of the innovative work that your private sector and public sector bring to the table. In terms of the Secretary's vision when it comes to smart cities, It is now week 6, so we are still developing and working on these policies. But I think there are 3 things that I kind of wanted to leave you with as we are thinking through our work when it comes to smart cities. Number 1, smart cities must mean safe cities, and a lot of that is going to be focused on the nuts and bolts of ensuring that we are maintaining and making our roads and highways and walkways and bike lanes better. And that is going to be something that is definitely reflected in the Build Back Better plan. And I think the opportunity for the private sector, across the world, as they're thinking about coming into the U.S. market, is how do you reimagine safety, taking advantage of new technologies to allow Americans in this new post-pandemic economy to travel the road more safely. We are, obviously very, very focused on trying to reduce the number of road deaths in this country, which is unfortunately way too high. Even in the pandemic, where we had less travel, we were still experiencing surges in road injuries and road fatalities. So that's something that we are going to be highly focused on in the Build Back Better plan. The third thing I'd like to leave you, or the second thing rather, is that smart cities must be sustainable cities. And that is something, that we, I think, can learn a lot from you about. When you are in a desert climate, you have to be an innovator. And for the United States, and something that the president is hyper focused on, as well as the secretary, is transitioning our economy from a fossil fuel based economy to a clean energy, sustainable based economy. And that's going to mean a ton of different of opportunities for the private sector. When you look at the Build Back Better proposals that were made on the campaign, and I think what's being discussed now, there is going to be a large focus on the Department of Transportation and a large focus on the Department of Energy as well. And the policy levers that each of those departments in particular have to support sustainability are going to be pushed and to the limit in terms of the current authority that we have now. But also we are very focused on making new programs that will bring electric vehicle charging to this country. The president made a campaign promise of 500,000 EV charging stations across the country. I was just talking with the state of Alabama, which is maybe a state that you wouldn't necessarily think of as one that is supportive of EV charging, but they are very hyper-focused on this. And actually a lot of it has to do with the state of Florida and the evacuation routes along for hurricanes. They know that there are a lot of EV cars in Florida, and they need to have EV charging infrastructure along those evacuation routes if people need to leave the state of Florida through Alabama to get to safety. So it's opportunities and things like that I think are going to be really critical for the private sector to participate in and help us really achieve this goal of a more sustainable economy. And third, I think the third thing that the secretary is really focused on, and he talks about this in almost every single meeting that I'm in, is that I think smart cities are going to have to be equitable cities. For far too long, we've had a painful legacy in the United States of using transportation projects to divide cities, and that's not going to happen anymore. And that is a big paradigm shift, especially as we talk to a lot of our state DOTs. But that is something that the president, that the secretary is very committed to. And so, trying to ensure that smart technology just doesn't happen on the west side of Los Angeles, but also happens in South Los Angeles. That smart technology just doesn't happen on the west side of Washington D.C., but also happens across the river in Anacostia. Is going to be really important. And so the democratization of smart technology, I think, is also a really big, important opportunity, and something that the private sector should think about leveraging as they work with the federal government in order to deploy these technologies and take advantage of the funding and the permitting processes that are needed to get these technologies to market. So, I think it's a really, really exciting time for smart cities, and something that that we are very, very, very hopeful that Build Back Better will do a great job of supporting in the near term as well as in the long term.
Thank you so much, Charles. And you've shared here such a valuable information with our audience, and we're very grateful for that. Ram, what is the role of organizations such as the Federation of Local Authorities serve in raising awareness to the smart city ecosystem and importance? As we've heard here, validation of technology is a key. What support does your organization provide to smart city companies seeking to expand operations outside of Israel?
Okay, thank you, Meital. First of all, hello from Tel Aviv, and thank you all for the opportunity to join you here today. The Federation of Local Authorities in Israel represent every authority, as they said. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish or Arab, large or small, peripheral, in the center of Israel, and this diversity is our strength. Our role as the Federation of Local Authorities and the innovation company that we have built is to help them in everything that they need. And of course, by the raising of awareness regarding to smart cities and tech, that is one of the main role of a municipality, especially when every citizen can get services from, let's say, an insurance company, banks, or all those companies outside the municipality, at home, by smartphone, and etc. And I think that the COVID-19 show us all how it can change by a minute. And another thing that the Municipal Innovation Company, the innovation took, it's as a main issue, it's a work plan, and to encourage Israeli companies to work with the Israeli municipalities and expand their expose and the market. When we are doing what we are going to do now is supporting them and give them platforms in the web with the web called the MIC, the Municipal Innovation Center, and it's sharing knowledge and the best practices from all around Israel, from the municipalities and from the company. And in the Muni World and the Muni Expo, that is an event that we are every year, approximately 10,000 people are coming, about 1,000 people from around the world. We are showing them by face-to-face, let's say, the services and the products of Smart City. And I hope that we can do it this year at October in the 2021.
Thank you so much. Shal, perhaps you can share with us what are the leading smart city innovations and trends in Israel? What have changed in the recent years in the way municipalities are considering smart city innovation? And what are the current key priorities you see of municipalities? What are the pressing challenges smart city innovation already help solve? You can share with us.
Sure. Thank you, Meital, so much, and Ron for letting me participate in this. It is very exciting. And first, I would like to share maybe my point of view. Of course, cities are, to speak about trends in cities is huge, because cities are probably among the most complex organizations if you compare it to corporation. Even the largest corporation, cities are much more, have many more layers and complexity. So I'll try to share my experience from several points of view. Is first and most important, maybe the Citizen Initiative, which I was part of the groups that from idea to implement this initiative, which is a live lab of the city of Tel Aviv together with the University of Tel Aviv to assist implementing, trying and adapting technologies into the city while creating simultaneously an ecosystem for developing of innovation as a startup nation. Okay, so that's one. Another one is just working with many municipalities, and other issues and with many tech companies on trying to penetrate markets. And that's it. And some similarity to another initiative I'm heavily involved, which is a fintech funds, the similar difficulties around between traditional organization and new technologies. So, so I think many spoke here about trends, but maybe we should remember that while in such conferences we usually speak with leading cities and speaking about the most updated trends, most of these cities, or many of them, are far behind. Meaning there is a huge difference coming from either financial resources or managerial capabilities. So we speak, very highly on the cutting edge of things, but I think, I don't know to give the exact percentage, but it's a huge amount of, or number of cities, and it is all around the world. I'm exchanging ideas with my colleagues around the world. It's the same. So we should bear in mind when we speak trend, it's not the same trend in the most advanced cities and the lagging cities. So maybe I think the most important trend is maybe the state of mind of the leaders of cities, meaning the first years where I would call it a push state of mind, meaning technology was pushed into the cities, mainly in the heavy infrastructure, fiber optics, sensors, smart cameras, et cetera, but with no clear return on investment in any point, meaning financial or other. While recent years, we see the more advanced municipalities setting and defining the vision, the strategy, the challenges that they are looking for and calling for technology to solve it, and not the other way around. And to take it into a practical example, I will take, let's say, a trend of smart mobility, which is all around the big cities. And if we'll take Tel Aviv in that, if you take 2 years ago, we took to the hub traffic lights, really smart technology, which enable to predict the traffic jam before it's occur, and using a very light infrastructure. And they gave them a mission to have a POC in the city and to work it out. Now, about a while ago, Tel Aviv just took a strategic decision to turn the pyramid of transportation upside down, giving the pedestrian a full priority and putting the passenger car on the bottom of the pyramid. So in a minute, everything was, not in a minute, but everything is now focused on to achieve this goal. And this startup specifically was asked now, instead of giving to the priority to find the best way to make the traffic jam as short as possible, to give the pedestrian to identify and find the ways to give the pedestrian the priority. So, and that comes with a concept of city which pedestrians are part of the community, discussing on the face-to-face with the business, the local business, and also, of course, environmental. Another one, I think, another example for the trends, which is important maybe today because the International Women's Day is coming, speaking with the Safe City. So another startup very interesting in this hub is called Safe Up, which is a community of women that's created by of course, the cell phone and the application and other layers, which assist women around the city to feel and to be more safe by assisting each other while walking around the streets. So this is a very nice example of a trend of the community involved and being part of the solution of cities. And there are other trends that are, I will not elaborate, like energy and sustainable. And maybe for small cities, the quick success is usually in the digital transformation and creating direct connection between the city and the resident. I think that's my advice to cities that are not so progressed. I don't know if I have time, but if so, I'll elaborate later on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shachar. This has been very thorough overview, and I wish we had more time. So we have one more question to Ron. So with all those amazing technologies in Israel, what is the path for Israeli innovative smart city company into the US? So successful implementation in cities in Israel, is it a must? How should a company go about introducing its solutions to a city in the US? What is the typical process? How long does it take? And what are the local US partners and advisors that could serve an important role? You're on mute, Ron.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so thank you, Meital, for the question. I think what you heard so far from the various speakers today is that there's a lot of attention being given, a lot of opportunity in the literally trillions of dollars of money that's going to be spent both in public sector and private sector. A typical when an Israeli company gets into the United States is to find a joint venture partner sometimes, someone in the same business space, and to reach out and create a strategic partner. Could be an engineering group, could be someone that sells a similar product. Those are some ways of approaching it. Many of you are already listening carefully to the RFP process and watching carefully RFPs around the states and cities where specific projects are being proposed and RFPs or tenders are being accepted. Obviously, it's a bit of a cumbersome process, but that's another way of doing it. I would also suggest that I think we heard from Charles at the U.S. Department of Transportation that there's probably going to be a lot of focus on these kinds of things, and you heard there's probably going to be a large bill that is going to be considered by Congress, which will authorize a lot of money to be spent on transportation infrastructure and a whole lot of things, everything from waste to traffic to energy to lots of different things that many of you may be involved in. So you want to be watching carefully and monitoring, possibly through just following up with the people who are speaking today. Anywhere from, our firm obviously will be doing it, but the cities themselves, the department, some of the folks that are presenting that have different experiences. I also want to point out that I think the Congresswoman made a very good point. Pilot projects really are a good way of introducing a new technology into the states. But I will tell you, take Florida, for example, if you're doing business and you can prove your concept in Fort Lauderdale, which is a city in Florida, lots of cities around that area will be interested if they can say, yeah, this is good. The fact you proved it in Israel isn't necessarily the be-all, end-all. Nobody wants to be embarrassed if something fails. On the other hand, if there's something really good and it's cost-effective, that's why the notion of introducing a pilot project, approaching a city, approaching a county, our local governments would say, hey, we have something here that you may be interested in. It's brand new. Can we create some type of opportunity for us just to run it, maybe at a reduced cost, but to give you an opportunity to see how it works? That is also good. We can explore that with you further depending on what you're doing. But those are various ways. The resources will be there, as the mayor said from Miami. I think it's a question of having the contacts, the introductions, the relationships for you to sort of get a chance to put your presentation forward and make an introduction to someone who's going to be at the staff level or an elected official level, interested in what you're doing and making a decision about it.
Thank you so much, Ron. And we have a long list of questions to our brilliant panelists, but we're 1 minute before 11 a.m. And we have some great questions from the audience. What I suggest we'll answer those questions via email. And we will now please hear from Susan Hettelman, Deputy Commercial Consular at the U.S. Embassy in Israel.
Thanks so much, Meital, and thank you to all of the speakers. I know we're out of time, so I will try and make this very brief. I just, I know from my work with SelectUSA that discussions such as this are invaluable to Israeli companies who are trying to pursue US market opportunities. And so I want to make sure that all the Israeli companies participating today are aware of the abundant resources available to you through the SelectUSA program, which is the federal government's program to assist foreign companies seeking to establish or expand operations in the US market. SelectUSA is committed to helping Israeli companies of all sizes find the information they need to make decisions, to connect to the right people, as Ron was just saying, at both the state and local level, and to navigate the federal regulatory system. We actually have a full-time employee, Sigal Mendelovich, who's on today, who's based in Tel Aviv and is dedicated to helping Israeli companies find the information they need. One last thing, we do host the SelectUSA annual summit. This year, it will feature 5 days of virtual programming from June 7th to 11th. This is really a perfect opportunity for Israeli companies looking to connect with a diverse base of representatives from across the United States, all of whom are eager to incentivize participating companies to locate in their regions. Of extra relevance to this group is that with so many US states and regions pursuing smart city initiatives, the summit, I think, will be a great business development tool. It's really an opportunity to learn more about what's needed at some of those smaller municipalities, as mentioned by several of our speakers. So if your company is considering investment or expansion in the United States, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm sure Meital will share contact details. My colleague Sigal and I stand ready to assist and work with you to make sure that we can leverage the full capabilities of the SelectUSA program and the US federal government to facilitate your investment. With that, Meital, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about SelectUSA, and thank you to all the speakers. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Susan, and thank you again to our amazing speakers, which we could have heard from them for many more hours. We will share contact and follow up on this webinar. I would like again to thank Ariel Ashkenazi, Ed Rose, at the America Chamber of Commerce, the Israeli Consulate in Miami, the Consulate General of SelectUSA, מרכז השלטון המקומי, BDO Israel. תודה רבה לכולכם. Thanks so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Be safe.
Thanks, everyone.